All right, well, it looks like we have quite a few people watching now, so that's great. Thank you everyone for joining us. So we're here to talk about weddings near and far during the time of COVID-19. As you can see, my guests and I are tuning in from our houses. We are working remotely, but still very much here to help and assist our clients in any way that we can. Before I get started, I did want to let everyone know that there will be a live Q&A at the end of this webinar. So if you have a question, just pop it into the Q&A section at the bottom of your computer there, and we'll answer as many questions as we can with the time that we have. So first, I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Brittany Vickers. I am the catering manager at the Vancouver Club. Just some background on myself. I've been in the wedding and events industry for over 13 years. You might recognize me from my time at Blush Bridal, but I've been with the Vancouver Club for about a year now, and I've had the pleasure of working on weddings and special events ever since. I'm joined today by just a few of the industry's top wedding planners. First, we have Alesha Keats. She's from Alesha Keats Weddings and Events. There she is. Next, we have Erin Bishop of Filosophi Events.
Hello.
There she is. We also have Soha and Jenny from Countdown Events Planning and Design.
Hi, everyone.
We have Jordan and Devon from Smitten Events. Here they are. And last but not least, we have Katie from Katie & Co. Occasions.
Hi, everyone.
Well, thank you, ladies, for joining me today. I know that your clients have probably been reaching out now more than ever for guidance on their special day. We just wanted to provide a platform where individuals can tune in and get some valuable advice on how to navigate this unprecedented time. So first, what I would love to discuss is why each of you first got into this industry and maybe touch on your style and approach to weddings. Let's start with Alicia.
Hello, everybody. I've been in the industry for about 15 years now, and I came from a theater background, and it's a very long story that I won't waste the whole webinar getting into, but that is where I came from. And our approach to planning at Alesha Keats Weddings is a very personalized approach. So we take a limited number of clients on each year and really personalize the planning process with them. In terms of style, we like to really get to know our couples and then create a wedding that is a reflection of their own style and really dig deep into what they want to represent at their wedding, how they want to celebrate and what story they want to tell, and then use that as a foundation in our design, and then bring a wedding that is a reflection of them to the table. And yeah, that's us. Happy to be here. Hi, everyone.
Thanks, Alicia. Next, why don't we go to Erin?
Hello. Thanks for having us, Brittany. I'm Erin from Filosophi Events, and like Alicia, have been in the business for about 15 years. We actually worked together at another company way back in the day. And I came into events from hospitality and also from like music production, festival production side of things, and ended up in weddings. Just found it a ton of fun and really sort of soul satisfying on the few weddings I had worked on, which led me into the fold. And originally, when Filosophi was started, we were really targeting clients who wanted to get married somewhere non-traditional, so like not a hotel specifically. Over the years, that's kind of evolved more to just trying to work with clients who just want to do non-traditional things. And that's been sort of our signature, not necessarily a specific look or feel, but just sort of shaking up the normal format and the normal traditions. And that's sort of, I think, what we're best known for.
Thanks, Erin. So next we're gonna go to Jenny and Soha.
Hi, everyone. So for me personally, I kind of started with a love of food and different cuisines and different food plating and food art and all of that. So I went to the Art Institute of Vancouver, and then from there I worked at the beautiful Vancouver Club for about 6 years running the wedding program. So at the Vancouver Club, I got really immersed into the luxury weddings and the high-end weddings there, and that is where I met Soha, who is right here, and Soha from Countdown Events. So we joined about 6 years ago, and I've been a part of the team ever since. And I would say our approach to weddings is definitely a full service approach. So it's getting everything done from start to finish, whatever the client needs. So if there's a dirty window, we'll be there with Windex. Whatever you need done to make sure it's perfect and beautiful, we will do. Our style, I would say, is more inspiring and timeless. So when your guests walk into the room, we want oohs and ahs. We want people to, jaws drop, the cameras come out, you take your pictures. Something that's really special, but also something timeless. So when you're looking at your wedding photos, years after the wedding, it's not like that was so 2010. It's a timeless look, and it's a reflection of the couple and what they want.
Amazing, thanks, Jenny. So next we're going to ask Jordan and Devon about their approach to weddings and what got them into this industry.
Hi everyone, I'm going to talk for the both of us. So Devon and I came into this honestly as kids, as corny as it sounds. Wedding planning was our dream, and we went our separate ways, did post-secondary education, and then kind of happened to weddings by accident. We both started working for another planning company, and then bought that company, partnered, rebranded as Smitten in 2013, and we've been working together ever since. So our approach is really collaborative. We work with our clients to create events that are intentional and meaningful and personalized, and I think that's something that all of the planners on this panel really excel at. We want to figure out exactly what it is about our couple that makes their wedding unique and highlight that on their day. So that's something that we do most, and everything from full planning to partial planning, wedding day service. So it's really a broad spectrum and allows us to work with a great variety of clients.
Amazing, thank you, Jordan. So next we'll go to Katie.
Okay, great. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today. Like Brittany and actually Jenny as well, I actually started my career at the Vancouver Club. So I worked there for over 10 years and started in concierge, and then went to events about 3 years into that, for a total of 7 years. And during that time, ran weddings and corporate events and the club events as well. So it was just really amazing to be able to create events and help bring somebody's vision to life. And then I decided to launch my own company, which I did last November. So relatively new to the event planning scene, but not new in experience. Like a lot of the planners have said, I think we focus on really creating something that is personal to our clients. Everybody's unique and everybody's love story is different. So to me, that's really important. What's going to make their wedding stand out and be really, really special to them.
Thanks. Yeah. Well, I think you all have your own planning styles, but one thing we can agree on is that there's a lot of passion and love in this industry. So I'm just very grateful to have you all here today. Thank you. So next, I would just love to share some positive stories or trends that you've seen come out of this experience. Why don't we start with Erin?
I think obviously this has been a really rough time for a lot of people who have envisioned their day a certain way and suddenly have had to re-examine that. But I think one of the common threads through our clients who are dealing with this is at some point they all kind of have the realization that I just want to marry this person. That's why we're doing this whole song and dance. So at the end of the day, if that means eloping now and having a party later, or having a tiny party now, or whatever the option is, I've watched as my couples have come to that realization that all that matters at the end of the day is that they're getting married and they're starting their life together. And so I think like in the mayhem of wedding planning, not everybody gets that sort of moment of reflection where they get to have that realization. And I think it's really helped those couples kind of refocus on what the most important thing is, which I think is a good thing.
Thank you, Erin. So next, let's go to Jenny and Soha.
So I think a big thing that we also saw is just the wedding community coming together to support each other during this time, and everyone just banding forces. When it all sort of went down in March, the very first thing we did was start calling everyone and just check in and say, how are you doing? And what's going on with you guys? Because there's so many small businesses in this industry. So we just checked in with everyone to see how they were doing. And thankfully, a lot of them actually were still offering a limited service. So lots of florists were still offering flowers and bouquets to take away. Lots of catering companies were still offering, meal delivery services to home. Gyms were doing online stuff. So we put together an initiative that was called Support Local #. on Instagram, and we just started pushing all of these things to our networks to try to get our networks to also support all of these vendors in our little community, because it's a vendor family. It's a bit different in our industry.
Amazing. Thank you, Jenny. So next, let's have Jordan and Devon share some positive stories or trends they've seen come out of this experience.
I think kind of further to what Erin was saying, the commitment that our couples have had to each other and the willingness to do what it takes to either get married right now or wait. The waiting game is not easy, and we have had this conversation with so many of our couples that they've already been engaged for a year, 18 months. They have to wait another year or 18 months. And that's really hard because it's a lot of time for people. The wedding is the first step in your life together, whether that means traveling or starting a family. And I think that it is really hard to look that far if you have to, but there is such an amazing commitment and a show of love between our couples that it makes it, whatever the decision is, it makes it really worth it.
Wonderful. Thank you. So next we'll go to Katie.
Yeah, I mean, both, well, actually everybody that's spoken already has kind of touched on it. I really think the sort of sense of community, not just with the other vendors, because that's been amazing. Everybody's been so supportive, and it's been really great within the wedding industry to kind of share ideas about how everybody is going to get through this and what we can kind of all do to adjust our services and be there for our clients during these really uncertain times. And it's been really great working with some really amazing clients who have been understanding. I mean, it's hard when we can't give our clients answers because we don't have the answers. And that's very weird for us planners to really not be like, nope, this is what you should do. So we're just offering, you know, kind of the best that we know and what we think our clients should do. And people have been really understanding and supportive of that. So that's been nice.
Great. Thanks, Katie. So this next question is going to be for Alicia. With all of the uncertainty surrounding COVID-19, couples have many questions. Any thoughts on some uncommon questions that you think couples should be asking, and what's your advice for them?
Yeah, so I'm going to start by saying I'm not a COVID-19 expert, and obviously I've never been through something like this before. And so our approach in the beginning was to be as proactive as we possibly could. So just gathering as much information as we could find and then sharing it with our couples immediately, reaching out in the get-go and just saying, this is what's going on. We don't know what this is going to look like, and here's the information, and let's make the best decisions we can with the information we have in the moment. And I think everybody wishes they had a crystal ball to know how this is going to all unfold. And we're all making the best advice based on the information that we have. When I was thinking about this question, I was really cognizant that there's going to be some people listening to this who may have not made the decision yet to postpone their wedding. So I'm going to speak to you first. If you haven't decided and you're just waiting to see how everything is going to unfold in the next little bit, or your wedding's a little bit later in the year and you haven't made that difficult decision, I might suggest you ask yourself some questions, such as, is it important to you to get married this year, and on your specific date? I know when I got married, it was really important I got married on that date. It was a flower situation and I needed those specific flowers. And so if that's something that's really also important to you, then maybe taking that into consideration in your decision making. And then thinking about how important it is to have the people you are intending to invite to actually be there physically with you. And then that will bring you to your guest list and looking at who's on your guest list. Is there anybody that's a little bit older? Anybody that has any health considerations you need to think about? Is anyone traveling? What is the size of your wedding? And then kind of gathering all that information and looking at what you've been told within your own city. I don't know if everyone is based in BC who's listening to this. And then making a decision that's right for you, and also being kind to yourself as you work your way through that maybe you don't have to make the decision immediately. You can just let it settle and decide what's right for you. And I think Brittany will probably talk about some of the considerations that we're all looking through and navigating when it comes to venue and food and service and that sort of thing. But I wrote a little list of things that are slightly outside of that realm that maybe if you have made the decision to postpone, you could make sure you've you've factored these different questions in. First and foremost, I'm a big fan of communicating with your guests. So have you told them that you're postponing? We have been at this point really doing a save the date so that we have the flexibility if we need to reevaluate in a few months from now. But making sure that you're telling your guests, especially anybody who's traveling, because they are likely not wanting to ask you or worry you, but would also probably really like to know if they need to be looking at getting a refund for their flight or trying to reschedule it. Another kind of outside of the box question you might want to look at is if you have a wedding website, are you on a yearly subscription? Does your subscription cover your new wedding date? Some of the companies that we've used for our couples have offered to pause the subscription, and so you can tell everybody your new date and then pause the payments for a little bit, and then when it gets closer to the wedding, have it go again, so that you're saving a little bit of money, and you're not going to also lose all your hard work that you've poured into your wedding website. Another question you might want to be asking yourself is about your attire. So have you picked up your wedding dress or your suit? And if you are looking to be having your celebration in a year from now, maybe how are you going to best store it? So do you want to work with maybe a dry cleaner or their bridal boutique and ask them, based on the material that your dress is made of, how can you best protect it so that it looks exactly the way it should be on your wedding day? Side note, I wouldn't recommend doing any alterations at this point. We usually recommend doing it a little bit closer to the wedding, and now that's probably a good thing to kind of hold off on that. So I would definitely recommend that. If you are moving your wedding to another season, maybe keep in mind that you might want to revisit the design. So if we're planning on a beautiful summer wedding and now you're looking at a romantic, intimate winter wedding, do you need to make some considerations and adjustments to your design? That also kind of touches into attire as well, that maybe you want to think about whether or not the attire you've asked your wedding party to wear is still seasonally appropriate, and if there's any changes that you need to make to that. Also, I was thinking, I already touched on that flowers are important to me, keeping in contact with your florist and talking about the new date that you're looking at, how the flower supply chain is being impacted, and if that's going to impact your design, and whether or not, if you've changed your season, if that's going to also impact the design and you need to be looking at other flower choices. And then last consideration, which I don't have any wonderful advice to offer at this point, is I think we're all going to be really looking to how we're going to provide a lot of guest comfort. So we know that there's going to be a lot of different changes that we're going to be implementing into weddings, and what those all look like, we're still working our way through and determining, but we want to make sure that the guests are really comfortable at the celebrations and able to relax. And so as you start navigating through this new world, what do we need to do to make sure guests are really comfortable and able to relax and celebrate with you? So those are just a few for you to think about.
That's great. Thank you so much. And just to elaborate on what Alicia said, we as a venue are certainly hearing a lot of questions such as, when will weddings be allowed again, and how many guests can join us if we want to maintain our 2020 date? And those are valid questions. We are keeping a close eye on the announcements from the government with regards to restrictions on gatherings and social distancing, and sharing any updates with our couples as they are announced. But that said, I would urge people to start thinking about some of the finer details that need to be considered, such as, can we have dancing? And if so, how big of a dance floor do we need to allow for adequate distancing between people? Do we need to make modifications to our menu and the way that meals are served or the way that tables are set? Do we need to stagger the arrival times of our guests so that not everyone is congregating at the entrance at the same time? These all would have seemed like minor details before, but I think it will be important now more than ever to consider the logistics and the way that we approach events to ensure the safety of everyone in attendance. So moving on, with numerous event restrictions expected to remain in place over the summer, I'd like to ask Erin and Katie to share some of the creative approaches they've suggested for clients hoping to keep their date. Let's start with Erin.
Sure. I mean, I think the first thing that sort of came to our mind was what we're doing right now, which is like a virtual experience. Obviously is no substitute for the real thing, but when this situation kind of first hit, it was the first thing that came to mind, and we worked with a few local photographers and videographers to test them setting up their professional cameras linked to Zoom, so that rather than seeing a computer image, like camera image like you're seeing of us all right now sitting in front of our laptops, that people could stream their elopement style ceremony with professional quality footage to other people around the world or around the city or whatever that looks like. And so we did a few tests of that, and it actually really looks amazing. So if you are thinking about having a streaming element to an elopement or something like that, talk to your photographer and videographer if you have one, or reach out to one about having them connect their cameras to their laptops so that they can zoom a really high quality image that is going to be easier for people to see kind of the emotion and feel more connected to the event. And then we've really just been exploring the idea of the micro wedding, which is, you know, what we're faced with as a necessity right now, but which I've always thought was the perfect way to have a wedding. Definitely how I'll do my wedding, which is around a 30 guest experience. And unlike an elopement, which generally is more just a couple and a few witnesses, it might have a dinner element, it might not. A micro wedding has like all of the elements of a wedding, from, you know, quite elaborate decor. There's a ceremony, there's maybe some cocktails, there's a dinner, a plated meal or whatever that is, and then some sort of after dinner entertainment or mingling. That definitely sounds ideal to me. And there's so many ideas that couples have around design and decor that end up getting tossed because the scope of doing that much detail or that expensive of an element for hundreds of people doesn't work. But now when you're looking at 30, you can do some really cool stuff because of the small scale, and you're able to implement it, you know, within the budget and within the amount of time really that it would take to pull it off. So it opens up a whole world of possibilities to do a really lavish, beautiful experience for less people. And at the end of the day, you know, couples, when they're facing their guest list, there's a lot of obligation invites on there that they feel like they need to make. And now their silver lining is, you know, the perfect excuse to really trim that down to the people that really matter to them without offending anyone, because everyone will understand they're not doing this by choice. So I think elopements with an elevated virtual element, if that's something that's interesting, and micro weddings are kind of the focus of what we're looking at for this year.
Thanks, Erin. Those are all great ideas. So next we'll go to Katie.
Yeah, sure. I mean, obviously the elopements and the micro weddings, that's kind of what we're seeing people request at the moment, which is great. Another option obviously is the postponement. So looking at dates for either later this year or next year. Right now it's mainly next year, as I'm sure most people are aware. But that doesn't mean that the date that you were originally supposed to get married on needs to go by the wayside. You should still make that a really special date. Order in, drink some champagne, get some flowers, do your first dance. Just really make that special, because, you know, we understand that it's frustrating and it's really difficult. You've put so much work in, you've gone through all the emotions of all of this. So even if you have postponed or changed your plans, don't let, you know, what you really want go by the wayside.
Thank you, Katie. So this next question is going to be for Countdown and Smitten. Planners are known for their creativity and thinking outside of the box. What are some ways that couples can celebrate their engagement and have a little bit of fun from the comfort of their own home? Let's start with Jordan and Devon.
So I think that the idea of doing a celebration over Zoom for an engagement is so easy. I think at this time, everybody's drinking. Everybody, I think, wants a reason to celebrate. And there's no reason why you couldn't say to your friends and family, put a dress on, do your hair and makeup and join us on Zoom. Let's pop some bubbly and really celebrate. So that, I think, is kind of a natural thing that we can all do at this time. So it doesn't have to be ignored, the celebration of it. You don't have to feel like you missed out on that excitement when you first get engaged. And then beyond that, continuing on what Katie said, we think it is really important to acknowledge your original wedding date. I have couples who are looking to go even further than grabbing takeout and toasting it, but doing like an intimate version of what they would have had, connecting with their catering team, connecting with their florist, doing, and even if it's just a picnic, but it's a picnic that you still get dressed up for, you can really make a nice effort to commemorate the day.
Great, thank you. So next, let's go to Jenny and Soha.
I think for us, the biggest thing is really keeping our couples and our clients super positive, and we don't need to stop celebrating. We can keep on celebrating. So whether it's an engagement or you've officially moved your date to 2021, we've, for a couple of our clients, we've been sending out little mini celebration cakes. So it's just a tiny little cake, and it kind of jumps back to supporting local. It's made by a local pastry chef that we work with. And it's just a little cake that they can celebrate with the two of them. You cut it open, there's confetti that flies out, or your new date's wrapped inside. But it's kind of a way to take moving your date to next year, making it a little bit more positive and a celebratory thing instead of seeing the sort of sad side to it. So just making everything a little bit more fun and making every little event a mini party.
I love that. Thank you. So for our next question, I would love to discuss with Alicia, Jordan, and Devon how you're managing requests from 2020 couples who need to postpone their wedding. Let's start with Alicia.
We are doing whatever we need to do to make it happen. So first and foremost, walking with our couples through their decision-making process, and kind of what I was saying earlier, reviewing all the information that we have and trying to make the best choice with that information, and keeping all of the priorities intact. And we're postponing and doing whatever we need to do to make that happen.
Great, thank you. And how about Jordan and Devon?
I wasn't sure who was unmuting. Are you going to talk?
I was going to say that we're basically in the same boat as Alicia. We're doing everything we can for our clients. Everyone's really emotional, and I think that it's kind of when you realize that your wedding that you are going to have a month from now, 3 months from now is not happening, you kind of start to go through a bit of a grieving process. So we've been there emotionally for our clients and emotionally for each other throughout this time. But I think that once they are booking a new day, confirming all their vendors, it's kind of there is a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel. And so our clients are very excited for next year. And we're still postponing more, but we are postponing most of our weddings from this year.
Well, you know, we, of course, as a venue as well, are getting these requests and doing our best to work with couples and their planners to find dates that hopefully can work for everyone while still allowing opportunities for new couples to book in. There's a lot of moving parts, and I know you planners not only have to coordinate with the couple in the venue, but also photographers, DJs, makeup artists, hairstylists, officiants, and the list goes on and on and on. So I just wanted to take a moment to thank you guys and all of you planners that are watching for all of your hard work during this time. We truly could not have gotten through it without you. So thank you. So moving on to our final question before the live Q&A. I was hoping that we could discuss for couples that are recently engaged and feeling a little unsure as to how and when to start planning. What is your advice for them? I think this is something that we can all talk about. So let's start with Erin.
So if you're just engaged, congratulations. And I think my best advice, and I'm sure everyone will echo that sentiment, is it can be easy to feel a bit sort of paralyzed by the uncertainty right now. But if you know you want to get married, just get into it, because of course all of the weddings from this season, or most of the weddings from this season, are pushing back into next year. And so while now would be a very normal time to start your planning for 2021 in usual circumstances, suddenly you're faced with availability being extremely limited with sort of the best vendors in the city who now have moved clients to next year. So it's going to be tougher to put together kind of the dream team that you want, with some flexibility on dates and things like that. So the sooner you can get into putting your key team in place, venue, photographer, obviously planner, like band, those sort of top tier vendor needs, the better. Because if you wait and see, of course, the availability will just continue to go down and down and down. So it's a fine line with our own clients or new clients that we're talking to. There is, you know, the potential unknown of, will this drag into next year and what will that mean? So every client or every couple needs to decide for themselves if they're okay with putting down deposits with vendors, knowing that they may have to postpone or downsize next year, then proceed as planned. If that would be the worst case scenario, to have deposits down with vendors and then need to either postpone or downsize from 2021, then for you, it's probably a better decision to just wait and see how things go for a bit, but just do that with awareness that availability for vendors will be more limited when you get into it later.
Thank you, Erin. So let's go to Alicia next.
I totally agree with everything that Erin said. You totally touched on everything I would have said. The one piece that I always say to all engaged couples, COVID aside, is to really carve out time in your lives and amid this whole craziness to really celebrate being engaged. Because for me, being engaged was one of the best times of my relationship, and I would have happily stayed engaged, but my husband said that you get engaged to get married, so I lost that battle. But it really is a really fun, exciting time when you are making that step together to spend the rest of your lives together. And there's so much hope and planning and that is there. And I think in any given day, sometimes the wedding planning can be stressful in that. And so with this added on top, of course, there's going to be an added layer of stress. So set aside date nights at home right now, and eventually when we can venture out, go out on date nights. I'm a big fan of doing one at least once a week and really connecting to each other and not talking about COVID and not talking about the wedding planning, and just really reminding yourselves about why you've made this decision and how exciting it is. And, you know, I've talked a lot to my new 2021 couples about how we are all wanting something to celebrate. I think we're all desperate for wonderful news and good things to celebrate. And so by celebrating your engagement, you're also spreading joy to everyone in your family and friends and giving them something to look forward to. So like I said, I agree with everything that Erin said, and that's just another piece of it, is to focus on you guys as well in all of this.
Great, thank you, Alicia. So next we're going to go to Katie. What advice do you have for newly engaged couples?
Well, again, basically, definitely what both of those ladies just said, making time for yourselves and each other is exceptionally important, because this can all get very stressful and crazy really quickly. Just to further on what Erin said, if you're not quite ready to put down a deposit, you can always put a hold in with some of your vendors as well. Just reach out and inquire and just say, would you mind holding that date for us while we decide? Most of the time they'll give you a first right of refusal if they get interest from somebody else. And like we said earlier, the industry has been really, really understanding. This is all very new for us as well, and we're still learning how to navigate it. So we're being pretty patient with people. So we'd recommend just putting some tentative plans in place. And then what you can do is make a timeline for yourself where you kind of lay it out and say, okay, by this date, I'm going to decide what we're going to do. And here's our plan B, just in case we need it.
Great, thank you. So next we're going to go to Jordan and Devon.
So I'll take this one. I think one thing that we're kind of talking with our new couples about is figuring out what your priorities are. If there's a photographer that you absolutely have to work with that is already booked on the Saturday of the weekend that you wanted to get married in 2021, consider a Friday, consider a Sunday. I think that from a planning side of things and a vendor side of things, we've really done our best to try and maximize where our clients from 2020 have moved their weddings to allow for there to be lots of space for everybody next year. But I think that they're, you know, having those key vendors in mind, if that's a priority for you, then I think that being able to explore alternate dates is not a bad idea. And just further to what Erin said, don't hold off on planning. I think, yes, it's uncertain times, but the volume that we're expecting for 2021 is so high that there is space for everybody, but we need to keep things moving.
Thank you, Jordan. That's great. So lastly, we'll ask Jenny and Soha their advice for newly engaged couples.
So I would say definitely you need to celebrate. You're engaged, it's a happy time, so pop some champagne and have some fun. But the time is definitely now to start planning. And I would say the one thing we can add to all of that is that there's so much that you can actually do online and on Zoom calls back and forth. You can still share floral inspiration with your brides or show different lighting, floor lighting, rigging. You can share fonts, you can share music, you can still look at schedules. And there's so much that we can continue to do with our clients at this time. So it's not like this is a full stop by any means. We're just getting everything going. We're busy little bees in the background for all of our clients. And then once we do get the green light, we're going to be in a really good place.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone. That's all really great advice. So it looks like we have a few live questions coming in. So we're going to try and answer as many as we can with the time that we have left. How this part of the webinar is going to work is I'll ask the question, and if someone has an answer, they're going to actually put their hand up, and then I'll call on them to answer. So it looks like our first question here is from Carmen. She says that her wedding was supposed to be yesterday, but they've had to tentatively hold a date in September. They have just over 50 guests at a different venue, but given current advice of no events over 50, would you advise to postpone again or wait another month or so to see if there's any changes? As we have seen, things change so quickly, we would hate to postpone again and then find out that restrictions could have been lifted in time for September, for example. All right, Erin?
I think what I would be telling Carmen, or I guess what I am telling Carmen, is there's no need to make that choice right now today. Definitely things have been changing so quickly and it's impossible to know what will happen. But what I would advise is to get a plan B in place now, feeling out possibilities with your venue and then all of your vendors and just putting holds on a potential plan B date so that you know if you do need to make a choice, you can make one quickly. And then, as I think was Alicia said earlier, letting your guests know we're still staying the course for the September date, but we may pivot to this other date if things don't work out. So basically all your dominoes are set up. And then, as I think Katie said, or one of the other ladies, give yourself a date when you're going to make that call. So maybe it's 60 days out, maybe it's 90 days out, whatever feels good for you. And then make the call. But then when that time rolls around, everything is ready to make that switch. So, do the work now so that you can relax a little bit and then wait for your decision date and then make the call a little bit closer to, because things may change, who knows? So you just want to be prepared in case they don't.
Great. Thank you, Erin.
Oh, can I add one other thing too, that I don't think we've touched on, which is with this 50-person event thing or event limit, I think it's important to note for people who are thinking about downsizing that your vendors are included in that 50 people, everybody in the building. So I just wanted to make a note of that as it's a question that's come up a lot. So servers, bartenders, DJ or musician, photographers, you need to account for everybody that's going to be there. So it's going to be more like a 35 person, or depending on, what you have going on, just remember to factor in your vendors.
Great, thank you so much. Does anyone have anything to add to that? All right, I think we're going to move on to the next question here. So we may not have an answer for this, and that's okay, but Christine is asking, do you think groups of 100 to 150 will be allowed by next summer without social distancing? That is quite a loaded question. Erin, go ahead.
Oh, I don't want to answer all the questions, but
that's okay.
I sure hope so. I think that things have, like I said, progressed really fast, and things could surprise us. But as with anything, so like being in Vancouver, is it going to rain in August? Probably not, but it might. So we approach a wedding, with a really good plan B for rain. So the same goes for next year. I hope that we'll be able to have weddings normally. I have a roster full of brides who just moved from 2020 to 2021 who also hope it will be okay for next year. But with all of those clients, we have a plan B to either downsize or postpone again. And that's really the best that we can say for people right now, is just hope for the best, but plan for the worst, the same as you would for rain.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Jordan, do you have anything to add to that? No? Okay, I think she answered her question.
It was kind of the same.
Thank you. All right, perfect. This is a great question. So next, how should we navigate contracts and deposits i.e. putting them down now or soon, knowing there's a potential to move the date, even to next summer? Katie.
I would obviously, a big part of that is just when you're speaking to your vendors and before you put down a deposit, just make sure that you're asking the questions about what their cancellation, postponement, and how their deposit structure works. So if you ask those questions in advance, then you'll be prepared if you do get to the point where you know what, you have to postpone or cancel or what have you.
Thank you, Katie. Does anyone have anything to add to that? Yeah, Erin.
It's definitely a question we're getting a lot because it's kind of a double-edged sword. But yes, if you put down a deposit now to secure a vendor, you can expect that it's not going to be refundable if it's not refundable in the agreement, even in the case of the pandemic. But hopefully it will be transferable to another date. And like Katie said, just be informed about that. And your only alternative, if you're not comfortable with that, is to wait and see what happens. And then, like I said earlier, that runs the risk of availability being limited. But, you know, you kind of can't have your cake and eat it too necessarily when it comes to booking vendors. So you just have to make that choice. And like someone else had said, if there's some vendors that really matter to you to have, then they're probably worth investing in booking sooner. And then other ones that you're not so tied to certain ones, you could wait and see and then go with who's available later.
Great, thank you so much. So the next question here is sending out save the dates for 2021 insensitive to brides going through everything this year? Jordan.
I would say no, because you still need to be able to get excited about your own wedding. And I know something that we're saying and sincerely saying to every inquiry that comes into us is that we're really excited to talk to you about your wedding and something super positive and new plans and new ideas and everything that we can look forward to in 2021. So I think it's really fair for you to be able to do the same and give your guests a heads up. And we don't obviously know what's going to happen, but I think we're all hoping and expecting that 2021 is smooth sailing. So I don't think it's insensitive. I think that it's your turn to celebrate, and you did just get engaged and you are planning a wedding. So you should absolutely have that ability to share.
Great, thank you so much. Now I have someone asking about preferred vendors here. What I'll do is I'll email you directly, and this list is going to be different for each vendor, but I can send you some recommendations for vendors in the city that we recommend. So moving on, the next question is, do you think vendors will be flexible moving to 2021 for summer dates if 50 people restrictions are still on? I'm happy to actually answer that first if you guys don't mind. I know we as a venue, and every venue and every vendor is going to have a different policy. But if you have already booked your wedding for this summer, and there are 50% restrictions in place and that's just not the wedding you saw for yourself, we are doing our best to accommodate you in 2021 wherever there is space. So please feel free to open up that conversation and just let us know where you're at. Does anyone have anything to add to that? No? Okay. So next we have got quite a few questions here. That's great, guys. Thank you. Here's a great one. What have you encountered with venues in respect to approaching micro event and meeting minimums? Have you encountered a venue that has a social distancing plan for successful events? Yeah, Erin.
I think that this is definitely in the works. Some really interesting information came out from the States today from an association down there that really laid out social distancing for events specifically, which I think a lot of us will start to look to as a guideline. I think venues, are just like any other vendor, want to do what they can to sort of salvage some business during this time where, they're also being devastated by these restrictions. And we've seen some really interesting kind of elopement or micro wedding packages come out where venues that normally have a substantial minimum are now being lowered in light of the fact that the guest count is going to be lowered. So I would encourage people to reach out to venues if they're thinking about having a small wedding and just talk to the specifics of what they have going on and how that venue would suggest approaching it and what they can offer. Don't just assume that because it's a huge venue that they're going to charge you a huge amount of money to have 10 people there, for example.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Does anyone have anything to add to that? Okay. So I think we have time for one more question, and I'm so sorry if I don't get to anyone. Please know that I will email you directly with the best response I can provide to you after this if we don't get to your question. So the last question here is, our wedding is currently scheduled for late August of this year. We're leaning towards decreasing our guest numbers and hosting a family-only micro wedding, but we're concerned that we won't know what our wedding will look like in terms of what distancing looks like and how to use the space, how dinner will be served, and if guests have to wear masks. Do you have any advice? Okay, well, I can take that on first, and then we'll go to Erin. We are still waiting on advice from the government as to what they recommend in this situation, and we are going to follow that to a T. As of right now, we are making plans in terms of physical distancing and what we need to do for safe meal service if and when it is deemed safe to do so. So we'll be sure to update you with that information as it comes. Erin?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a work in progress as far as what, will be required and when. But there are sort of some pretty interesting ideas about being able to distance at a small wedding coming out in conversations with other vendors and whatnot. If you're going to have an outdoor ceremony, another planner had mentioned in a group that I'm in, having picnic blankets out instead of traditional seating that can naturally keep family groups apart from each other. So while the idea of social distance and a wedding don't really go together very naturally, if you want to go ahead and have a small kind of family wedding, certainly working with a planner, they can come up with some ideas of how to do that in a way that doesn't just feel as weird as a piece of plexiglass between you and the grocery store person. Just something that feels a little more natural or comfortable, but is still respectful of what needs to happen to be safe.
Great. Does anyone have anything to add to that? Yeah, Devon.
I just wanted to say, for couples who are deciding to get married this year and downsizing their guest lists, that they have to be willing, they have to be comfortable, and they have to respect the, let's say, changing of an RSVP. Everyone kind of has their own restrictions when it comes to hanging out with 50 people. And obviously everybody wants to spend the wedding day with you, but you have to be respectful of everyone if somebody has to change their RSVP. And it's probably harder for them to say that to you than being there themselves. And I think we just have to be open to that.
Great. Thank you, Devon. Anyone else have anything to add there? No, I think we're good. Well, I just want to thank you guys so much, Alicia, Erin, Jenny, Soha, Jordan, Devon, and Katie, for taking the time to answer these questions. I hope that this will serve to provide a bit of clarity to our couples out there and maybe inspire you in the process. If anyone watching has any follow-up questions, you can always reach me by email at Vickers, that's my last name down there, at vancouverclub.ca. I am here for you and happy to provide support and guidance to anyone in need. To everyone watching, please take good care, be safe, and look out for one another because we are all in this together. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Bye.